Greetings everybody, this is episode number 4 of this course where we are talking about Redux and how to work with a Redux store inside of a React application. So I hope you've already watched the previous episodes. This is the last episode of this course where we are going to take things one step further and store everything inside of our local storage, right? So if you haven't watched the previous episodes, please make sure you do that, right? Because I assume that you are now fully, familiar with the code base, with the application that we have talked about, we have developed. And now the last step for us is to, persist our employees inside of our local storage. This is the code that I've got, right? So I'm still on branch number 3. So the previous episode. If I run the application, the problem with the application is that I can, edit employees, delete them, I can add them, but when I refresh, everything is lost. The reason is everything that I've got inside of that employee list, inside of that state, right, inside of that employee slice, is inside of the application. So when the application refreshes, when the application kind of restarts, everything is lost. Everything is local. So we need to have a way, right, to persist our data inside of our local storage. I don't know whether you know how to use local storage from your React applications from JavaScript, but I assume you do know that, right? If you don't know how to use local storage, if you're not familiar with local storage, I'm going to probably publish a couple of, short episodes talking about that. But this is what we are going to do inside of this, episode. So if I, for example, navigate to branch number 3, and if I bring the application, right, as you can see, when I refresh, nothing is lost. Everything is stored inside of my, inside of my local storage. So if I go to application, if I go to local storage, I will see this employees list, right, with the IDs and the names. So this is the list that I am maintaining inside of my local storage. So let's see how to do this, right? So we're gonna, now that we can, add, edit, delete employees in our Redux-based app, let's persist the data to local storage so that it doesn't disappear when the application reloads. We'll do two things. We will load some initial data from local storage, and of course we're going to save our changes back to local storage automatically. So first, how to load initial state from local storage. We're going to create this, function, right, inside of employee list, employee slice. So basically what we are doing here is that we are going to get this item, right, from local storage. We're going to call it data. And then, what we are going to do is to see whether there is something inside of the data or not. If there is something inside of the data, we are going to parse that and return it. Otherwise, we're going to return an object containing an empty array called list. So you remember that the state, that our Redux state, our employee slice, maintains an array, an empty array called list. So this is exactly what we are going to do. If there is some data inside of our local storage, we're going to return that data. Otherwise, we're going to return an empty array called list. And from that moment onwards, our application is going to continue working with this data. And if we cannot find this, if we encounter any issues, this is what we are going to do. We're going to say fail to load data from local storage, and then again we're going to return this object containing an empty array. So if I take you to Visual Studio, VS Code, Visual Studio Code, this is the slice. This is the function that we just talked about. And then previously, if you remember, for initial state, we decided to go with an empty array. But here, we are calling this function, and then we are assigning the output of this function to our initial state, and then we are calling this we are using this initial state here. This part, right, this part is basically the same. So if you have watched the previous episodes, this part hasn't changed. So these are the reducers: add employee, edit employee, delete employee. The only difference is that, I mean, if I take you to episode number 3, the only difference is that previously the initial state that is also used here was set explicitly to an empty array called list. But now we are setting this initial state like this. We are fetching some potential data from local storage, and then we are setting initial state, right? So let's continue talking about this. This is the thing that we just talked about, right? We are going to call get item, trying to get an item called employees with the key employees, and then we're going to return whether an empty array or an array containing the the employees. And then we're going to use that loaded state inside of our slice, right? So how are we going to do that? Using this initial state. And then, of course, we are doing the same thing. We are pushing an employee to that list. We are, pushing. We are kind of, finding an employee inside of it. We are deleting an employee inside of it. That's it. The next step is to sync our state with our local storage on every update. So you remember that inside of our component, we had this feature of deleting an employee, right? Updating an employee and editing an employee, adding an employee. Now we want to be able to sync the items that we delete, add, or update with what we've got inside of our local storage. How to do that? So take a look here. This is store.js. You remember that, I mean, in the previous episodes, this is what we had previously, right? So we kind of imported our employees reducer from our slice, and we created this key here with employees reducer. And this is the store that we've got, right? And then finally, we exported the store, and inside of our main.jsx, we provided our application with that state. Now the store, with that store, now the store has changed a bit. Take a look at this code. Store.subscribe. And then inside of this try catch, we are going to get first the state of our store using getState. And then we are going to set an item inside of local storage with this key and this value. Otherwise, we're going to say that we couldn't update our local storage. There are some things that I need to talk about here. Store.subscribe. So this registers a function that runs every time the Redux state changes. Think about it. Whenever your Redux state changes, an employee gets added, an employee gets updated, an employee is removed, this subscribe function and whatever you put inside of it here will get executed, right? So inside of the callback, by the way, yeah, this is a callback function, right? This is a callback function using subscribe. If you haven't watched the videos I've got for promises and asynchronous programming, please make sure you watch them. So inside of the callback, we get the current state of our Redux, and then we're going to say store.getState using, this function. Then we're going to, extract the employees using state.employees and convert it to a JSON string. And then we're going to save it inside of our local storage with the same key, with employees key. If you remember from the slice, we use the same key to fetch our employees from local storage. And when we do that, when we fetch them, we parse them using JSON, right? And if we couldn't find them, we return an empty list. So, I mean, the first time that the application runs, because we don't have any, key called employees inside of local storage, an empty list will get returned, right? So this is what will return the first time you run the application or whenever you delete that entry inside of your local storage. And from that moment onwards, whenever you change the state, right, using that subscribe that you've got here, right, whenever you change something, this subscribe will get the state, so the employees in this case, and it's going to set a value inside of local storage using this key, and the value will be whatever is inside state.employees. State.employees is, of course, coming from here, right? So you could have as many reducer with different keys here. You could have, for example, departments and so on. By the way, there is a playlist that I am creating for integrating with the backend API with employees, departments, and so on. So keep an eye out for that one. It is going to be published shortly. So yeah, this is what is happening here, and that's actually the end of the episode. Now I want to go to my application here inside of Google Chrome, and I want to delete this. I told you, when there is no key here, or the first time that you run the application, because there is nothing to be returned from your local storage, an empty array will get returned. And if I refresh the application, you will see that nothing is here. But the moment I start to change the state by, for example, adding an employee because of that subscribe function, I told you the subscribe function will get executed whenever the state changes. So one change could be adding a new employee. So whenever you add a new employee, this subscribe function will persist that change inside of your application local storage. So let me go ahead and enter, for example, John Doe. The state has not changed yet, right? The local state called name inside of this employee manager component has changed because it is linked to this input. But I mean, because I haven't clicked on this add employee, the Redux state has not changed. But the moment I click this, the state will get updated, a new employee will get inserted, and I expect to see something here because of that subscribe function. You see? So right now, there is only one item here. So if I come here and add another one, you will see that now I've got two items. If I delete this, again, delete means another change to the Redux state. It means that this one will get deleted as well. So right now, we've got only this one. And I can go ahead and update this. I'm going to call this John Smith. The moment I update this, another change will happen inside of our Redux state, and that change, because of the subscribe function, will get persisted to our local storage, which is something that you can see here, right? And that's it. That's the end of this episode. That's the end of this playlist. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. Watch the course a couple of times. Clone the repository from my GitHub. Play with it, right? For example, go ahead and create another slice for departments. And then create your reducers. And then add that slice to your store, right? Practice with it. Practice makes perfect. If you want to really understand what is happening and how these different concepts are related to one another, you need to get your hands dirty. You need to start practicing with this. And I hope you've enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed a lot, creating these 4 episodes, and I really hope that you learned something. And again, if that's the case, don't forget to give this video a like, and watch out for the other courses that I'm going to publish shortly, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.